Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 237 Development Professionals first webinar for the year 2021. My name is Amunga Mfi, and I'll be the moderator for this session. I seize this opportunity to thank all our attendees. We are at this time 60 of us who've come to learn how to develop competitive CVs, motivation letters, and to prepare for job interviews in the development sector. At this time, I'll seize the opportunity to welcome our panelists, Mr. Momo Bertrand, Ms. Sharon Berry, and Madam Kimani, three experts who shall work with us for the next 1 hour and a half, sharing with us their experiences as well as the tips we need to be the development gurus from our country in the future. En ce moment, je tiens juste à vous souhaiter la bienvenue et à vous féliciter, à vous dire merci pour avoir pris le temps d'être avec nous. Et sans perdre du temps, nous allons une fois lancé, nous allons commencer. Et en commençant, je vais prendre le temps pour vous rappeler de certaines règles que nous avons observées. And so some of those housekeeping rules are as follows. The first is our timing. Normally, the webinar is scheduled to last between 1 hour, 30 minutes and 2 hours. This depending on the number of questions we shall have to answer as well as the engagement from our attendees. And so our cutoff time should be 7 p.m., worst case scenario. Secondly, we shall really try to alternate in English and French because we know our audience is bilingual. So I will try with my little French, and I know Momo Bertrand speaks French better than he does English. And so at any point in time, we shall come back to do summaries, or I shall come back to do summaries of the respective interventions of our panelists in French. And should anyone have a question asked in French, I believe we would try to respond in French as well. Thirdly, please type your questions in the chat box so we can, at the end, when we get to the question and answer session of the webinar, we can go and review the questions and connect these questions to the panelists. In typing your question, kindly mention to which panelist you would like that the question is addressed. Thank you. As moderator, I'll be looking through the questions, and if I see questions that are repetitive or have been answered in the conversation, I would kindly skip them in the interest of time. And finally, we shall have polls. We shall do some polling. After every panelist intervention, we shall have a poll we shall administer. And at the end of the webinar, we shall equally send a survey to get your appreciation and feedback from you in real time about how you felt concerning the webinar. Donc, je disais tantôt, nous allons essayer de basculer en anglais et en français au moment opportun. Nous sommes ensemble pour 90 minutes ou maximum 2 heures de temps. Ceci dépend du volume des questions que nous allons recevoir et de l'engagement des différents membres de notre auditoire. Et finalement, nous allons administrer des questionnaires pendant la session pour avoir votre feedback, votre rendu en temps réel de vos sentiments et surtout de ce que nous pouvons améliorer pour des sessions à venir. At this point in time, I would like to call on our webinar panelists to take 2 to 3 minutes each and introduce themselves. I will start with Sharon Berry. You're welcome, Sharon Berry.
Hi, Munga. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Sharon Berry. I'm an HR professional. I currently work with the British High Commission in Yaoundé.
Thank you, Sharon Berry. Momo Bertrand.
Hi, thanks, Mungai. Hi, everybody. My name is Momo Bertrand. I am a communication professional, and I work as a communication officer with the United Nations in Italy, specifically with the International Labour Organization.
Thank you, Bertrand. Thank you for being with us. And our final panelist is Nguyen Kimani.
Thank you, Mungai. My name is Nguyen Kimani. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. I currently am the executive director of an NGO called B Lab East Africa. And what we do is we support entrepreneurs and businesses that want to do business purposefully and consciously. So we certify them and we train them and we educate them on best practices in business. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Wing, for that introduction, and thanks to all the panelists for your brief introductions. At this time, I would like to take some moments to recognize Venasio Stephen, Elvis Temfag, and Dr. Chris Ngwa, as well as Divine Mambone, who are our host and support staff helping us to be able to put this webinar together. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much for supporting us with this initiative. Thank you. So, our theme for today, like I said earlier, is developing competitive CVs and motivation letters and preparing for interviews for the development jobs. By development jobs, we mean specialized organizations, regional organizations, international non-governmental organizations that work within or globally. Regional could be specific to continents and globally could be worldwide. So for example, you have the United Nations Organization, specific to Africa, the African Development Bank, the African Union, and you could have national organizations as well, like the Nkafu Policy Institute. All of these organizations form organizations that run development-oriented activities. And these are specific activities that have a specific way in which all the professionals in these activities or in this sector should market themselves to be able to stand out so they can be seen, distinguished, identified, to be able to occupy positions within this sector. And given the massive turnout, when I was starting 5 minutes ago, we were at about 80. Now we are over 100. No pressure, my dear panelists. This just calls for us to be, as explicit as possible, share every detail we can, because we have young people who are joining us here who are eager to learn, who are eager to understand, who are eager to have the tips you have that can enable them join this dynamic and very passionate sector, which is the development sector. So at this time, without wasting more time, we would need time by the end of this webinar, I can assure you of that. I'm going to call on our first panelist, who is an HR professional with the British High Commission here in Cameroon, Ms. Sharon Berry, to start her intervention. Ms. Sharon, you would have 20 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mungai, and again, welcome to everyone joining us today. I would be as brief as possible and try to cover as much as I can. Our learning outcome for today is simple. One is to ensure you understand the difference between a CV and a resume. Two, to guide you on the structure and content of a CV and how to tailor it for a specific job. And lastly, how to email these to a recruiter. So first off, what is a CV and how does a CV differ from a resume? CV, which stands for Curriculum Vitae, is a detailed professional document highlighting your experience and accomplishments. This document shares an overview of your career history, education, relevant awards and honors, scholarships, grants, research program, projects, and publications. A resume, on the other hand, is a simpler version of a professional document. It's a formal document that serves to show your career background. It's tailored to fit your job, but often carries just your background, your skills and qualifications for a specific purpose or position. So it's often 1 to 2 pages. The CV, on the other hand, is a more comprehensive document. It goes above and beyond the mention of education and work experiences and would often list in very thoughtful details all your achievements, running from the awards, honors, publications, to any other element you think can benefit that job. So people with more than 10 years of experience can often have CVs of 3 to 5 pages. But if you have less than 10 years of experience, I would say the maximum pages for you should be 3. So now that we've understood, or I'm hoping you're catching up with me or jotting that down. Now that is what a CV is. But what makes the blueprint of a good CV? Again, the blueprint of a CV are specific. You have your contact information, academic history, professional experience, qualifications and skills, awards and honors, publications and presentations, professional associations, grants and scholarships, license and certificates. And there could be 1 or 2 items I have not included. This list is not exhaustive. So once you have all of these elements captured in your CV, you do not need to have multiple CVs. One CV is good enough. However, what you need to do is ensure that it is well structured. And each time you're applying for a job, you can overhaul your experience or tweak your experience to reflect desired skill sets or relevant competences. It's one CV, no need to have multiple. Just make sure the one you have is well structured. And every time there's a job, you just have to tweak it to reflect that job. And next, I would move to the format and content of a CV. So I've listed all of these elements that make a good CV. But what specific information goes under each of these headings? I would start with your main heading, which carries your contact information. This part of your CV should include your full name, address, phone number, and email address. Please make sure you have a professional email address. Do not turn off an email that says sexy123 or boy blue, this and that. It should be professional. My name is Sharon Berry. My email address is sharonberry@gmail.com. Straight and simple and professional. The second part on your CV would be your career summary or statement. Here, right at the top, you want to position yourself on your target. A professional profile right at the top, describing the position you are targeting and what you bring to the table would excite any recruiter. A profile summary is a snapshot of your overall professional career. And this is a very important and effective section to influence a recruiter. To start, the first thing to do is identify those major skills and competencies you have acquired throughout your career, backed with numbers and quantifiable figures. This will position you as a candidate who has consistently delivered results. You should aim to avoid redundant and outdated information. This section needs to be well structured, clean and precise. No need for extra jargons. Hit the nail on the head in this section. Next would be your core competencies and key skills. You want to use this section to ensure presentation of advanced skill sets and keywords. Now, you really need to get to work on this part to be able to come up with relevant keywords from the list of responsibilities you've undertaken. And here's where you'd want to match it to the particular job profile. Keywords are particularly important in today's market as recruiters are shifting towards automatic systems to scan through CVs and identify relevant works. So you need to actually get to work to ensure you give yourself a winning chance by putting those keywords that would reflect your key skills and competencies. You have to list a combination of both hard and soft skills you've developed throughout your career. Avoid generic overused phrases such as team player, hardworking, multitasker. Go for more real-life examples that demonstrate all the skills. Here, I'm thinking of using phrases where you're using phrases like critical thinking, performance management, decision-making, and in those lines. The next point on your CV would be your career history. Start the section with your most recent job. Ensure the specific and measurable achievements are demonstrated suitably. Quantifying your achievements is an irrefutable indication of good performance. You want to really be able to quantify what you have achieved. You mention the name of the organization, the job title, the date you were employed, and a summary of your experience and achievements. You'd also try to highlight your growth within the organization, especially in an organization where you stayed for a couple of years and you have moved up the ladder. You want to be able to demonstrate that, to pull that out, elaborate on that clearly. Please do not lie or exaggerate on your CV or job application, because this would only demonstrate your dishonesty to a potential employer and could have consequences down the way when we get to background checks. Next, it's the educational background. This is pretty straightforward. Mention in a chronological order all qualifications gained, including grades obtained. Highlight the course and certificate to demonstrate continuous learning and professional development. Training and conferences. Include relevant trainings and conferences, including dates, locations, and outcome. Do not forget outcomes. People tend to put the dates, the location, and forget to articulate the outcomes. You have to be able to articulate the outcomes of every training and conference you attended. Then you have publications and presentations. For publications, provide a full citation, including your co-authors, the date, summary, volume, and page. For presentation, provide the title, the date, and the venue where you presented. Next up will be professional association. List the organization's name, location or chapter, and the date of active membership. So if you're a chartered accountant, you list the organization, the location, the branch, and the date of active membership, 2013, 2015, 2017. Then we have grants and scholarships. Here you need to provide the name of the grant or the scholarship, the date awarded, and the institution that provided the award. Next, you would be license and certifications. Here, ensure you include the name of the license or certificate, the date you earned it, and the institution that awarded it. This goes for professional certification because I know there's often a confusion with educational background and license and certifications. This would be when you're doing an HR certification, a specific career certification or license. Awards and honors. For each award, add the name, the year received, the organization that gave you the award, and any pertinent detail, such as it's offered every 10 years to bring out the idea of how significant that award is. Another key element on your CV would be your hobbies. There's often a debate on whether or not to include hobbies in your CV. I would say yes, but make sure the hobbies you list benefit the role. They should be able to provide worthwhile information to the recruiter. An example would be there's a CV for a grant proposal writer with Scrabble as a hobby. Demonstrate a love for words and a good diction. That is a good CV to have under such a role profile. Hobbies can also help to indicate you're a fit for the company's culture. You need to constantly research not just yourself, the job profile, but the company as well, to understand the culture and what you can bring to the table. Avoid generic hobbies like watching TV and listening to music. I would recommend you go for hobbies such as volunteering and community involvement. Why? Volunteering shows a lot of initiative and strong morals, and it also teaches organizational and leadership skills. So you want to demonstrate that. You could go for a hobby like writing. Communication is the heart of every organization. So whether you're writing novels or publishing scientific papers, these would help give a clear representation of your written communication skills. It could be blogging as well. All of this help demonstrate that you have solid written communication skills. Next up, another hobby I would ask people to try to tap into with things like learning languages. Speaking English is not always enough. If you want to develop your career, you need to learn other languages. And studies have found a correlation between learning languages and problem-solving abilities, intelligence, and memory skills. So such a hobby in your CV helps to boost it. Then there is sports. You can never go wrong with sports. It doesn't matter what sports you do. Exercising in general develops self-discipline, patience, and helps you bounce back from disappointment. Team sports will help to create opportunities to improve leadership, communication, and interpersonal skills. You should go more for things like this. And the last part of your CV would be your references. Who are references? These are referees who can testify about your character, your skills, and ability to prospective employers. You could consider your referee as a personal advocate or ambassador. So ensure you include their name, job title, company, address, phone number, and email address. I would like to belabor a point here when sending out people's names as references. Before you give out someone's name as a reference, be sure you have your permission to use them as a reference. And also let them know they may be contacted. You could go a step further, provide them with information about the job you're applying for, so they can relay your experience to the job and give you the best possible reference for the job. You might also want to provide them with an updated CV with a list of your skills and qualifications. That makes the skeleton or the format and content of your CV. But before we round off on this, let's look at a simple career summary. Unfortunately, I can't share my screen, but I'll just read this out to you. On your career summary, you want to use an example like, just bear with me a minute. This is not exclusive, it's just a guidance to tell you the kind of things you should look for. Sorry, my screen is acting up. Okay. A simple career summary would read something like, project manager with 10 plus years experience specializing in web production, education publication, public outreach and consumer packaging, professional, creative, flexible with proven analytical skills, adept at researching and crafting award-winning marketing campaigns for a wide variety of clients and products. Next up on what you'd want to look at in your CV is now matching your experience to the job, the terms of reference. I already mentioned tweaking your CV earlier. Now, while the structure and general content of your CV remains the same, you have to avoid sending stock CVs to recruiters. Each time you're applying for a job, you have to spend a few minutes to tailor the CV to fit the needs of the job you're applying for. If the organization is looking for, let's say, a programs coordinator, make sure you highlight aspects of your experience that reflect these skill sets, and then you downplay unrelated experiences. A starting point for this is the terms of reference. You need to take out time to read the duty statement of the job to pull out key informations and key points you need to reflect. If a job advert says something like, build strong relations with the Cameroonian Public Hospital Administration, in particular local director, initiate development and preparation of a capacity building plan that complements and integrates with the master plan development for the hospital, support the hospital administration, in particular the local director, to fulfill their management roles by providing ongoing support and advice on hospital management, administration, and clinical service training and development skills. You need to be able to pull out key elements from what I have just read out, and you would have to demonstrate things like evidence of successful relationship management undertakings, experience working in Cameroon or a similar country profile, that would be ideal. Evidence of ability to work in a supportive mentoring role, demonstration of understanding of hospital administrative operations. This is just an example to tell you, once you read the job profile, you need to be able to extract something from it that you can use to build your CV. For every key point highlighted in the job profile, there should be at least one demonstration within your CV that shows you can do this because you have done it or something very similar in the past. By spending time to do this word change or draw emphasis on relevant skill sets for the desired job, you have succeeded in making your CV more likely to pass that initial screen. Next up, let's look at grammar. As already mentioned, content is very important, but content should be well structured, concise, and precise. Here are a few tricks to ensure your content is well captured. 1, you check for the right font type and size. It is critical for your CV to be legible and easy to follow. To improve readability, be sure to choose the proper font type and size. There are primarily two categories of font types. There's the serif and the sans serif. I recommend you go for sans serif, which would involve font types like Helvetica, Arial, Geneva. These are simple and easy to read. Additionally, you want to keep your text between 10 to 12 points. While it can be very tempting to reduce your font size to reduce the number of pages, you do not want to sacrifice readability for length. It's only going to kill you. Point 2 would be check your margins. Be sure to check your CV margin size. Margins that are too large will leave too much white space on each page, while margins that are too small can make the page seem overfilled. Good rule of thumb is to keep the margin between 1 and 1.5 inches. Point 3 would be utilize your space effectively. CVs can easily become very lengthy, especially if you've been in the industry for several years and have amassed a great deal of experience. To ensure you're using your space effectively and your CV is easy to read, consider the following technique. 1, bulleted list. For areas like skills or awards, put them in small bullets to make them easier to consume. You use point 2, section headers. You can distinguish section headers from the rest of your CV content by making them bolder, larger, or underlined. And lastly, you can use bolded words. In addition to section headers, consider bolding other important words such as your name, your job title to set them apart. And 4, use of active verbs or action verbs. What are active verbs? Active verbs are words that you would use to describe an action that a subject is performing. They differ from the passive verb in that they put a focus on the sentence subject, while passive verbs highlight an object that receives the actions in the sentence. You need to ensure you're using active verbs where possible. For examples, go for words like created, analyzed, devised, initiated, to present yourself as a person who shows initiative. Let me read a sentence in the passive and then a better version in the active so you get the point. I was tasked with organizing the large annual holiday party. Responsibility was recognized as one of my strengths. If you put this in the active voice, it just reads differently. I coordinated a large annual holiday party and was recognized for responsibility and proactive decisions. Just the small changes would make your CV go a long way. You need to be able to grab attention, even with a small change in language. Another phrase in an old language passive voice would say, participated in business development process, including recruiting, submission of bids to donor agencies, and project management. A better capture of that phrase in an active voice would say, key part of business development team with responsibility for proposal coordination of US aid or ND organizations projects. Those very small details, just a twitch in language, would make your CV stand out more. You also want to check for spelling and grammar errors. And there are many ways to do this. You can use a spell checker on your Word document. There are several applications to help you check the grammar in your writings, or you enlist a second pair of eyes to check over the whole document. First impression really matters because they're going to give you that honest feedback, and things you didn't see, they would help you point out. So I think that's what makes the fundamentals of your CV. And to summarize everything we have discussed, I would say the basic principles of a CV are: 1, relevance. Research yourself, the sector, the employer, and the job description. Start with a very clear understanding of what the selector is looking for. 2, order. Put the most important information first and give it the most space. Ensure your CV is targeted and relevant. Use the best examples you've got. 3, format. Make it easy to read. 4, attention to details. Check spelling and grammars. Beware of cut and paste. Review. Ask yourself, so what? Or ask others for feedback. I think that is the fundamental of writing a CV for the development section. Now, once you've written the CV, what's the next thing? You need to mail your CV. how do you send this email? You don't just draft and you don't just attach a document to an email and you send it off. You could use a cover letter in the body of an email. And if you choose not to do that and to use your cover letter as an attachment, you have to have specifics on how you word this email. The first thing to look at would be your subject line. The most important part of your email message would be the subject line. Your subject line should explain to the reader who you are, what job you're applying for. Be specific so the recipient knows what he or she is receiving. Employers often hire for many positions at the same time, so be sure to include both your name and the job you're applying for. I would say Sharon Berry, job application for XXXX. Second point is before on the subject line, some employers do require job IDs. Some jobs have ID numbers. If the recruiter requires that, please be sure to include that in the subject line. Now for the body of your email, do not run off without greetings. Start with courtesy. Dear, good morning. Begin your letter in a professional way. If you're attaching your cover letter, then your email should be simple. It will simply state that your CV and cover letter are attached, and then you offer to provide additional information and let the reader know how you can be contacted. And you end your email with yours sincerely, if you know the name of the person you're writing to, and yours faithfully, if you do not. You need to be very sure about the two. Yours sincerely, if you know the name of the person you're writing to, and yours faithfully, if you do not know the name of the person you're writing to. Avoid thanks a lot or warm regards. Those are for more informal emails. Next on your email should be your signature. Again, I reiterate, make sure you have a professional email. Now, once you have that, you should have a signature in your email. It should carry your contact information, such as the full name, including surname, your email address, your phone number. You could include a link to your LinkedIn profile or other social media accounts that can benefit your career or business proposals. Fourth point is to check again for spellings. You need to constantly check for spellings. You have to ensure what you send out is in good English and void of spelling and grammatical errors. Then the last point would be attach your CV. Make sure you name the CV in your computer before sending out. Most often we tend to have 1 or 2 versions of our CV in our computers, and you need to name them specifically so you don't make the mistake of sending an old version or the wrong version. I would name a CV Sharon Berry, Programs Manager. You just have to come up with a naming pattern, but you should be able to identify that document first thing, and the person receiving should be able to know that the CV belongs to Sharon Berry. This is the cover letter for Sharon Berry. I think that brings me to the end of what I have in terms of developing a CV for the development section. I would stay tuned for your questions or comments or any matters arising. Thank you, Mungan.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That was really detailed and really practical, straight to the point. And I thank you. We all thank you for that. Dear panelists, dear attendees, please, we have a question and answer session. So keep sending your questions. I will be reviewing them, and when we get to that part, I will then assign the questions to each and every panelist. Un petit résumé en français, s'il vous plaît. Sharon a parlé d'une différence entre un CV et votre résumé. Elle a dit le CV est un document détaillé qui parle de tous vos réalisations en termes de carrière, en termes de profession, en termes d'expérience, en termes de récompense, en termes de publication, tous les détails vous concernant qui peuvent permettre à ce que vous puissiez vous distinguer. Par contre, le résumé, c'est justement cela, un résumé qui est beaucoup plus détaillé et qui se concentre uniquement sur vos expériences professionnelles et votre parcours académique. Ensuite, elle a listé certaines choses qui font partie du contenu de votre CV, mais ce qui ressort sont les suivants. La première des choses, c'est en parlant de vos expériences professionnelles, vous devez vous vendre. Donc, vous devez parler beaucoup plus de l'impact de votre travail ou de l'impact de votre travail au sein de l'entreprise, vos réalisations. Et ces réalisations ou cet impact doit être quantifié. Ne mettez pas simplement votre fiche de poste dans votre CV, non, mais allez beaucoup plus en avant pour essayer de détailler si je n'étais pas dans cette entreprise, voici ce que l'entreprise aura perdu. Donc, parlez beaucoup plus de l'impact de votre travail. Et enfin, elle a parlé de vos différentes récompenses. C'est bien de les mettre dans votre CV. Elle a parlé des personnes ressources, donc les referees, comme on dit en anglais. Les gens que vous allez citer, oui, les références. Les gens que vous allez citer dans votre document, vous devez les informer que ils sont cités comme personnes références dans votre CV pour qu'ils puissent être au courant. Comme ça, quand on les contacte, ils ne seront pas surpris. Et en dernier lieu, elle a parlé vraiment des autres détails comme vérifier que tout le document est bien écrit, le style d'écriture, la police que vous allez utiliser doit être lisible. Ne vous concentrez pas sur le fait que vous devez diminuer ce qui apparaît sur votre CV pour faire en sorte que ça ne dépasse pas peut-être 2 ou 3 pages, parce que ce serait à votre détriment si le recruteur n'est pas capable de bien lire ce que vous avez écrit. Et enfin, elle a parlé de comment, en envoyant votre mail, en envoyant le message ou en répondant à un appel à candidature, vous devez non seulement mettre le sujet qui doit être lié au poste dont vous êtes en train de faire une demande de candidature. Vous devez bien citer dans votre contenu qui vous êtes, le rôle qui vous intéresse et revenir faire en sorte que tout est bien écrit. N'oubliez pas de signer votre email et en dernier lieu, faites en sorte que vous utilisez un email professionnel. N'utilisez pas les choses, par exemple, comme 123mungai@gmail.com. Non, utilisez un email professionnel. Donc, utilisez vos noms. Donc, par exemple, si c'était moi, j'allais dire mungai.fi@gmail.com. Voilà mon email, ça doit être professionnel. Donc, c'est juste un bref résumé. Je suis en train de voir vos questions et Sharon va revenir à la fin pour traiter ces questions-là. Sharon, they are very pertinent questions, so do well to come back at the end and answer them. At this time, I would like to invite our second panelist, Mr. Bertrand Momo. He will speak to us mostly about how to align and structure our motivation letters to the job description. Donc, M. Bertrand va nous parler beaucoup plus des lettres de motivation et comment les aligner par rapport aux fiches de poste. Merci. Thank you, Bertrand.
Thank you so much, Mungai. Hi, everybody. Before I start, I just want to put a little bit of context to the whole job search environment today. On average, if you're applying for a UN job, you're one of thousands of people who apply. If you're applying for a top UN job, you're one of maybe, tens of thousands sometimes, if possible, these people who start the application. And so the goal of your CV, but also the goal of your motivation letter and your presence in the interview should be grounded in the fact that you are one among 100. So what makes you unique? And so that's sort of what I want to tackle first in the motivation letter, but then also in the interview. So your motivation letter, you've done your CV, it's perfect. And now there's that famous thing that says add your motivation letter. What would make it stand out in simple terms? I think there's a few points you need to consider. The first element, which I think is critical, is really you need to ensure that your motivation letter is consistent with your CV. And so when I was recruiting for one role once, I realized, for example, that the candidate had put conflicting information in the CV and it didn't match, the motivation letter information. So always double check, because sometimes some people have different versions. For example, you had one motivation letter for an old company and you forgot to double check and you sent the wrong motivation letter. So always double check that. The other thing is, I think Sharon mentioned it already clearly, it's your contact details are really important. I've seen some people sending motivation letters, and because they believe that the motivation letters are going with the CVs, automatically they're going to go and look for your number or your email in your CV. That's not correct. Ideally, you want to be able to include immediately all the contact information in your motivation letter. The third point, and this is extremely critical, is addressing your motivation letter. The common thing that we usually put is dear sir or madam, but imagine that you're the manager, right? You have 20 motivational letters. 19 say dear sir or madam, and one says your name. Which one are you going to consider better? Is it the one that says dear sir or madam, or the one that says your name? I think the one that says your name is going to be more impactful. So one task of every job seeker, I think, is looking for the name of your manager. You know, when I was applying for my United Nations role, I really took time to look for not only the title, but also the name of the person who was engaged, like hiring basically for the post. And I addressed my motivation letter, Dear John Mary. It's not his name, but, you know, I addressed with a specific name. So that is really important. Another point, and I think both Mungai and Sharon mentioned it, is the importance of quantifying your impact. Whether you work in accounting or you work even in something that's more literary, you're a writer or something, there's always a way of quantifying your impact. And if you imagine someone reading 1,000 motivation letters, right? What makes you the best candidate in terms of quantified impact? It's simple. Everything you've done, almost everything you've achieved in your career, or even at school or in internships, most of them can be quantified. Just listen to these two things. One person writes the motivation letter and says, I am applying to this communication job because I want to improve the visibility of your company. The second person says, in my past company, I implemented strategies that increase the number of visitors to the website by 50%, and I am bringing these solutions to your company. Which one are you going to hire? The 50% increase changes the whole narrative. Even if the two people had the same impact, but adding numbers and quantifying your impact can really, really make a difference. One of the last elements on your cover letter is really, there's a big debate about how long your cover letter should be. But usually, one thing, based on my research, one thing I've seen is, usually the more important your job is, the longer your cover letter should be. I was Googling actually, and I saw the cover letter that the Prime Minister of Somalia sent to the president, because it was very interesting, because like, I thought Prime Ministers don't send cover letters, but he actually sent a cover letter, and it was almost 2 pages, you know, like explaining why he thinks he's the best person to run the government of Somalia, and he was hired. But it was very interesting to see that lengthy thing. But if you're applying for an internship, for example, you may get away with, 2 paragraphs or something. So the length, I think, is directly proportional, to apply mathematical terms, to the, elevation or the importance of the role. But the key thing for me is companies are different. Organizations are different. The best tip you can get on writing a cover letter is getting people within the organization who wrote successful cover letters. Because I could come here and say, okay, you have to write, 2 pages, but if you're applying to WHO, which is the World Health Organization, or Médecins Sans Frontières, even though they're in the medical field, but they have 2 completely different cultures, and therefore the cover letters are very different. So your best bet, find someone inside who was able to get in, ask him, ask her, hey, can you send me your cover letter? Of course, not just upfront like this. It usually works best when you can find a connecting point. So one of your friends who knows somebody, Cameroon on dit quelqu'un qui connaît quelqu'un, who can help you get into the organization. Because just think about science, right? The only way you can know that something works is if you have evidence that it works. So those are the key points that you need to remember for the cover letter. Just very quickly, make sure that your contact details are there. Find a way to add the name of the hiring manager. And there's this software that you can use to find, for example, the email of almost anybody on the internet. It's called Voilà Norbert. So you can use Voilà Norbert to find the email of the hiring manager, so that you don't just send the cover letter in the software, but you can send it to him as an email too. And it's really important, if you want to get the best effective way to structure your email, it's really by asking or talking to someone within the organization. Donc, rapidement en français, mon gars il a dit que mon français est mieux que mon anglais, mais je pense que je parle mieux anglais que français. Mais toutefois, si vous êtes en train d'écrire une lettre de motivation, ce qui est important vraiment, c'est il faut inclure votre email et votre nom dans la lettre. Il faut adresser la lettre non pas à cher monsieur ou madame, cher quoi, essayez de trouver le nom de la personne qui recrute. Parce que si je reçois 100 lettres, et 99 disent cher monsieur et la 100e lettre dit monsieur Momo Bertrand, je serai plus engagé avec monsieur Momo Bertrand. Et la dernière astuce, c'est vraiment de parler à quelqu'un au sein de l'organisation. Parce qu'en termes de science, ce qui marche, si quelque chose a marché dans le passé, souvent, il y a plus de chances qu'elle va marcher dans le futur. Alors, demandez à quelqu'un au sein d'une organisation de vous envoyer une copie de la lettre de motivation qu'elle a utilisée. Donc, voilà ce que vous devez retenir en termes de lettre de motivation. Maintenant, les interviews. Interviews, I think it's really interesting that out of all the fears of human beings, public speaking is one of the biggest fears. I think people fear public speaking more than heartbreak. Heartbreak really hurts, but people fear public speaking more than it. And I don't really understand why. I also fear public speaking. I had to pee 2 times before speaking here, but it's pretty interesting. But I think interviews are one of the most engaging types of public speaking. I think, and the ones that can completely change your life. Just my personal story. I used to work with a marketing company. I had this dream of working in the United Nations, and I applied to about 500 jobs, in the UN, in Fortune 500s like Google, Microsoft, and I spoke to some friends and they were like, oh, dude, you don't know anybody there. You can't make it, but I really just had this conviction that if I kept going, I would, get that one interview that would change my life. And then, of course, it happened. I got that one interview and I was like, okay, I'm going to study for this interview like hell. Basically, I had a whole document in my computer that was called UN interview. And I wrote down all the possible questions that could be asked for that interview. I think it was 12 pages, And every morning I would just wake up, take a question, practice it. I'll be walking on the road, talking alone. People think I'm foolish. I'm practicing for that UN interview. And of course, long story short, the practice worked. And out of hundreds of candidates, I was selected for the United Nations role. I think it's really a testimony to the fact that whether you're in Cameroon today, whether you think you don't deserve this role, I think putting it work in your CV, your motivation letter, networking, and your interviews can really make a difference. So how do you stand out in an interview? There's so many things we could talk about, but we don't have the time. So I'm just going to go quickly in 7 minutes. Let me put a timer because I know myself. I can talk from now to Bonaberry. So let me put a little timer here. And what are the key things you need to remember in terms of interview? The first thing is that there are many types of interviews. And usually, if you're applying to a serious company, they will tell you what kind of interview you're going for. So for example, there are blended interviews where people ask you about yourself and all these random questions, but they also ask you about your job, your experience. There are other interviews that are more competency-based. And, competency, la compétence. Here they want to know, what can you do? So, for example, tell us about a time where, you improved the productivity of your company. So those are the more concrete type of questions. So before getting into the interview, be prepared. Know what kind of interview it is, because just go and Google it. For example, if they tell you you have a competency-based interview, just Google competency-based interview and be prepared for that type of interview. But the biggest question is, it's maybe rhetorical. The biggest question is, how do you answer interview questions? How do you answer these tricky questions that are meant basically to separate the people who really want it from the people who unfortunately did not prepare? There's one thing you need to retain. And if there's one thing you retain from everything I say, is really the CAR method of answering interview questions, and usually competency-based interview questions. When you're asked a question in an interview, you always want to bring it back to your experience. And the way you do it, it's using the CAR method. I'm just going to write it in the chat, CAR method. And CAR means context, action, and result. Context, action, and result. And you can imagine it as the car that would drive you to your dream job, kind of. But context, action, and result. Almost every competency-based question in an interview can be answered using this formula. I'm just going to take a simple example. Let's say someone asks you, tell us about a time where you solved a big problem in your company. And maybe you studied, I don't know, you studied, I don't want to say communication because all my examples are communication. You studied law and you'd had an internship in a law firm. Some people, when they're answering this question, they'll be like, oh, there was this problem in this company, and then I solved it, and then it was good. Like the question just goes in every direction. But using the CAR method, you start with the context. Tell me about the time when there was a problem and you solved it. What was the context? When I was working in a law firm in Boya, there was a situation where a client came in at 6 p.m. when we were closing, and she said she wanted, a lawyer right now to solve an urgent problem in her house or her household or something. There you give me the context. I am interested. Okay, somebody enters, it's an urgent problem, the lawyers are not there, what's happening? Next, you go to your action. And the action is basically, what did you do at that moment? So I looked at her and I knew that the policy said that after this time, we cannot accept people into the law firm. But I really understood that her problem, was really important. And so I found a middle ground and I took her contact details. I assured her that in the morning I'll contact the lawyer first thing. And I calmed her down and she went back home. What was the result? The result was that the first thing in the morning, I told the lawyer we gained a new client. The woman was not so sad and everybody was happy. And that lawyer actually became a lawyer. She actually became a client for us. Sorry, that person became a client for us for the next 2 years or something. So I gave the context of the problem. I gave what I did, which is my action, and I gave the result. Almost every interview question that you go through can be answered using this formula. I give the context of the situation, I give the action, and I give the result. Let me take a very strange question that can be answered with this. And the question is, tell me about yourself. For me, this is the most wrongly answered interview questions in life. Like, usually, because I interview sometimes interns and consultants, and I say, tell me about myself. He said, oh, my name is John. I know how to cook babala. I'm 44 years old. Oh, actually, I lived in Paris. Do you know Paris? Paris is beautiful. I'm just sitting there like, okay, your life is interesting, but how does it help me? How does it help me to improve my performance in the job? Tell me about yourself is a tricky question. The question is actually, okay, what is the context from which you come from? What are the actions that you've done? What are the results that you've had? And why does it matter? Remember, context, action, result. Tell me about yourself. Okay, I'm just gonna do how I do it usually when people tell me about yourself. I would say I'll start with context, where I come from basically. I am a storyteller and a communicator from Cameroon who believes that stories can make a difference in the world. Actually, I fell in love with stories when I was young because my dad had a printing press. Context. Second, action. And this love for stories has led me to take many actions, to start a marketing agency in Cameroon, to work in a marketing agency in California, and now to work as a communication professional in the UN. Next, result. And out of these, I've been able to run international global campaigns that reach over 4 million people. I've been able to impact the lives of people through communication. But most importantly, I've always been reminded that hard work, efforts, and commitment can make a difference as a communication professional, not only for the workplace, but also for the world we live in. Like simple context, action, result. Of course, your responses won't come in 1 second. Okay, I have like 1 minute left. Your responses won't come like this, but you have to really practice your context, action, and result. Some people, there's no miracle formula for these interview things. Honestly, the only thing is rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Like when you come into an interview room, people know if you're rehearsed or not. Okay, people know it. Like if you're good, they know it. If you're bad, they don't know it. Like I'm a freaky person at rehearsing. You know, like I have like all these notes. I'm gonna stay like basically if I have to speak for 30 minutes, I rehearse usually twice the amount of time. If it's for a job interview, dude, I'm gonna kill myself actually rehearsing. I'm like, just eating and just rehearsing, just rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. It's really the biggest difference. Like, just think of yourself as Mr. Leo or, Beyonce, like you're going in, there's this phrase that Samuel Eto'o says, I love it. It's like, chaque match c'est la finale. Every match is a final. Every interview is a final. For me, it's like, okay, this is the last thing that I'm going to do. So rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. So that's a little bit about what I had to say. But just very quickly, it wasn't in my points, but one thing that you should really focus on is on networking. And I just want to commend really Venatius for putting this together. Like, nothing would make a difference. Like, first, we all know the statistics that 60 to 90% of jobs are given through networking. Most jobs are not published. And so you may have the best CV in the world. Jesus may make your motivational letter, and Beyonce helps you to rehearse your interview. Networking is your biggest asset. So build relationships, connect with people. And I think forums like this that Venatius has put together are really, really, really important. Donc, très rapidement, en termes d'interview, chaque fois qu'on vous pose une question, il faut toujours penser contexte, action et résultat. Donc, si par exemple, je vous pose la question de savoir quel est un problème auquel vous avez fait face dans le passé et comment est-ce que vous avez réagi, il faut dire, le contexte du problème. Par exemple, nous étions proches de la faillite. L'action que vous avez fait, alors j'ai pensé à une stratégie novatrice de communication. Et en termes de résultats, on a évité la faillite, mais aussi on a fait un bénéfice de 10%. Donc, par exemple, toujours dire contexte, quasiment toutes vos réponses doivent être autour du contexte, de l'action et du résultat. Et l'astuce terminator, le terminator de l'astuce, c'est vraiment, 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 il faut se préparer. Donc, il faut se préparer pour chaque interview. Il ne faut pas juste entrer dans la salle comme ça. C'est comme, par exemple, si, je sais pas, Céline Dion ou Daphné monte sur le podium sans se préparer. Ça se sent. La voix se travaille, les réponses se travaillent. Donc, s'il y a 100 personnes qui vont participer à l'entretien, qu'est-ce qui vous rend différent? C'est votre capacité vraiment à vous préparer. Et je vais juste clôturer maintenant parce que là, j'arrive déjà à mon deadline. Il faut le réseautage. Le réseautage est extrêmement important. On dit certaines statistiques disent que entre 60 et 90% des jobs sont obtenus grâce au réseautage. Et la plupart des jobs ne sont pas publiés. Donc, tu peux avoir le CV de Jésus-Christ, tu as le Motivational Letter de Mohamed, même Paul Biya lui-même signe ton interview, mais si tu n'as pas de réseautage, souvent, tu seras bloqué. Donc, je dis des forums comme ça que Venatius a créé, je pense le 237 Development Forum Movement, c'est vraiment intéressant. Donc, voilà en quelques mots ce que vous devez retenir pour les entretiens et les lettres de motivation. Mais le français n'est pas facile. Hein? Quand tu veux switch là, ça se bloque un peu. Genre, OK, merci.
Thank you very much, Bertrand. I believe I'm not the only one clapping. Thank you very much, Bertrand and Sharon. So far, you guys have been outstanding. Without further ado, I'll simply call on our final panelist, our very own Ngwing, all the way in Kenya. Thank you.
Thanks, Mungai. Thanks, Bertrand. I'd have to say after this, I felt like I need to hire you. So everyone, thanks for keeping your attention here. I am speaking from a recruiter's perspective. So following the flow of the conversation of how to put your documents together, what to do and not to do in the motivational letter, and how to present yourself in the interview, I'd like to speak on a recruiter's perspective of when your documents come to my desk, what do I look for? and what are the things that you need to pay attention to. So I'll start with your motivational letter, or you may call it a cover letter. First, you want to keep in mind the situation in which we are currently, is that the job market is very difficult. Right now, a lot of people were let go. Many people are looking for jobs, so that makes it even more difficult for you to get to the point where somebody wants to interview you. So for me as a recruiter, when a cover letter comes to my desk, the first thing that endears your letter to me is whether or not you took the time to learn about my organization. So in as much as you are sending out generic letters, dear sir or madam, it's with honor that I apply to your esteemed organization. When I see a sentence like that, I just know that this is a generic letter, and it definitely doesn't endear me to you. So one of the things you can think about is, when you look up a company, figure out what is the company's vision, what is the company's mission. Can you use some of those words in your letter, right? So maybe there's a project that they just launched or they are working on that you can connect with, that makes me think that, oh, okay, you're paying attention, right? So I'll read through your letter to the end, and then I might look out for your CV. But if you don't capture my attention from that point on, it is very unlikely that I'll take the time to read through. Remember, I have more than 1,000 of these in my inbox, and I'm sieving through it. And I can tell if your letter is generic. Another thing to watch out is if you're using a recruiting agency that has helped you to draft a motivational letter. Make sure that when you receive that draft, you put your own spin on it, because can you imagine if 20 of you went to that same person and she gave you guys the same template and your motivational letters read exactly the same? It already gives a red flag to me. So you want to be careful that even if you're getting outside help to write your documents, make it sound like you or read like you. And also, how can it stand out more? So Bertrand gave us a very good example. I'll add another one. Like sometimes I see letters where somebody says, I am diligent or I am resilient. For me, that is theory, right? So instead of you telling me that I am resilient, so hire me, if you can tell that, okay, my organization is endeared to the Sustainable Development Goals, right? If you write something in your motivational letter, for example, having grown up in a place where water is an issue, SDG 6 about clean water and sanitation resonates with me. For me, I already connect with you that, oh, you grew up in a place that didn't have water, right? So you'll be good for this program because you understand the program participants. And also, you know what SDGs are because you have just talked about SDG 6 and you know exactly what it is. So for me, I would say, oh, okay, I want to read more and I want to know more about you. The other thing is, because your motivational letter is not supposed to be extremely long, you want to avoid repeating the things that you're going to tell me already on your CV. So you don't want to say, I'm a professional with 2 master's degrees and I've done a publication and I've done all this. This is already on your CV. So make sure that you use your letter to capture my attention and not to list things that I'm already going to find. As Sharon said, pay attention to errors. Like if I have problems understanding your CV from your letter from the first 2 sentences, I will not continue. It will just be tedious for me, okay? So ask someone else to read through for typos, for grammatical errors, etc., because those just put off a recruiter from the get-go. Then you want to think about, as you're choosing companies to apply to, please find companies that for you, you will be a cultural fit for them. If you are someone who likes structure, you like to go work for an organization that they have to train you, they need to take 3 to 4, weeks of training, and then there's induction, and then you start work. Make sure that that's the kind of organization that you're applying to. if you're that kind of person and you apply to an organization that maybe you're the first person who held that position, or that is a startup that is growing and the culture is not yet established, there's no manager ahead of you to train you. You have to be a self-starter. Don't apply for positions like that, okay? Because then you will go in and you will spoil your name because you will not perform. A lot of NGOs, especially when you're entering a program, they want you to hit the ground running. So for you, before you don't wait until you get the job to go start researching what will the job entail. Figure out what will this job entail so that as you even write your letter or you show up for the interview, you already know the core skills and competencies that you would need to perform. The interviewer or the recruiter has to be sure that you're the right cultural fit. You know exactly the kind of company you're coming to work for and you're prepared for it. If you're coming to work in a consulting firm and you tell me, and I'm in a consulting firm, right? And you tell me I'm a self-starter and you give me an example of a program that you were just told we need to solve the problem of, let's say, let me use an example. There's been a lot of thefts, right? And we need to solve this problem of thefts in this community. Here, go solve it. Nobody is going to sit there and tell you, okay, you have to think about how many people are in the community, what are the security measures, etc., etc. There's no training. So you need to be able to think outside the box and be that kind of person who fits in that environment. Because during the interview, I will give you a scenario and I'll tell you, this is the scenario. We have insecurity in Dadaab. I need you to figure out how my employees will be safe there. Tell me how. If you start telling me this, that, and the other, you're not the right fit, and we move on from there, okay? Now going to your CV, when I now look through your CV, what endears me to you, right? Sharon had mentioned your profile summary, and that's good. I also want to see on your CV a focus on the impact that you have had in that organization. One of the many errors that I see is that people list. You write a list and say, previous position, program officer at ABC Foundation. I was in charge of employees. I made sure that the program was implemented in time. I made sure that the reports were given in time. You haven't told me anything, right? I just move on from your CV. How you can say the same thing differently is you can say, instead of saying, I supervise the HIV/AIDS program, what you would say is, I supervise the implementation of the HIV program that reached 1,000 people in 5 cities, resulting in a 40% decrease in new infections. Now, that's the kind of manager that I want to hire. Also realizing that on this call, we might have a lot of young people who don't have management experience and may not necessarily have many work-related examples to give. I've seen some questions come through about gaps in CVs, etc. One of the things that you can think about is your volunteering experience, right? So let's say that you attended church in Bengwi Parish, for example, and you participated or you suggested a feeding program for orphans, right? So you don't just list the volunteered at Bengwi Parish feeding program, full stop. How you can word that is to say, I championed the creation and implementation of a feeding program for orphans and widows. And we reached 20 orphans, or we fed 50 widows in every dry season, for example, right? So for me, I've seen that, okay, number one, you're volunteering. Number two, you're volunteering and it is having impact. And this is the kind of person that I want. To think about, let's say if you don't have, like if you haven't been hired or you've been looking for a job for a long time, think that someone, especially in the development sector, we already know that there's so many issues to solve. right? So if you come to me and sing school, you have not been doing anything for 2 years, I'll ask myself, what have you been doing in those 2 years? In those 2 years, you didn't find a community program to connect with. You didn't find anything to volunteer. You didn't even go to primary school to teach or volunteer to even motivate those children. You didn't find your neighbors, two children, to gather them around to teach them something. You have to do something with your time. There are so many programs online that are free. Facebook has so many programs that are free. Those are the courses that you can list in those gaps to say, I took this time to learn about social media marketing. I took this time to learn about this, that, and the other. And granted, there are times when you will absolutely have nothing to put there. Maybe you had a baby and you've been at home and you've been taking care of this child. Or maybe your parent was sick or a relative was sick and you're a caregiver. Just come to the interview prepared to explain the gap. It's not a big deal, right? But if it's like a 5-year gap, please, you have to do something significant during that period that you'll be proud to tell somebody interviewing you that I was being useful. The other thing to note is if you're applying for a more senior position, even though there is the allowance to put a CV that is 2 to 3 pages long, try not to do that, because by the time we get to page 2, we are tired. So put only the relevant positions in your CV that would apply to the position that you're applying to, okay? So for example, if I'm recruiting for a program manager position and you were a gym instructor for some time, you can just list gym instructor, this period to this period, full stop. You don't have to go in detail about what you did in the gym if it's not relevant to the position. And if you have other compelling experience that will put you in the front. So you want to spend time on your achievements that resonate with the position for which you are interviewing. Now, coming to references, there was a question about if you have to put all your references on your CV. My short answer would be no. You are allowed to put, when it comes to references, put references available upon request. That tells me that if I need references from you, I will ask you. Then it also gives you the space to now call your referees, and say, I am applying to this position. Please do this, as Sharon had said. Please, if you're still working in an organization, don't list your boss as a referee without talking to them. Because we've had awkward situations where you call somebody and the guy says, oh, he's leaving. Now you can imagine what that tells me. I have gotten to the point where I want to hire you. And so now I'm calling your references. This is the last part of the interview, right? And then I get somebody respond to me like that. I will not hire you because you do the same thing to me, right? So you want to make sure, like Sharon had said, you prepare your referees, alert them anytime. Then also, just note that any position that you put on your CV, I have the right to ask you for a reference from that particular job. So this takes me back to do not lie on your CV, because you might list your own referees that are convenient for you, but you might have some experience in your CV which is making me make the decision that I want to hire you. So if you're a program manager at ABC company and you had all this wonderful experience at ABC company, but your reference is not from ABC company, I will ask you, Bertrand, can you give me a reference from ABC company? Now, if you can't do that, or you can't give me a compelling reason why not, then I'll know that there's something fishy, and I just move on to the next candidate after that. Another thing that I look for, if I screen CVs and I have CVs on my desk, before I even want to go in depth, I go on Google and I look for you. I go on LinkedIn and I look for you. So this is to say, I know that we are in the social media age and we post our opinions and everything online, but beware that the internet does not forget, right? So you can put firewalls, etc., but it's likely that I can do a search for you and I find information about you that would determine whether I want you to join my company or not. I also want to see a LinkedIn profile for you. And that LinkedIn profile should be similar to what your CV looks like. You know why? Because in the CV, like Sharon had said, people doctor their CVs. But on LinkedIn, your colleagues can see your profile. People who know you, have worked with you in the past, can see your profile. It is very rare that someone will put a public profile that is false. So we check, right? So make sure that if you don't have a professional profile on LinkedIn, put one there and make sure that it matches with the CV that you submit. In terms of interviewing, just to add on to what Bertrand said, there are some key things that we forget to do that are very helpful. So Bertrand had mentioned that your recruiter is going to tell you the type of interview that you're coming for. Most of the time, they'll tell you, oh, you're either coming to take a test or you're coming for it's a live interview, right? A lot of times, the person who calls you might not go into detail about who is interviewing you and at what level. So you are within your, should I say, within your right to ask clarifying questions about your interview. So when you're called and you're told, we saw your CV, we loved your CV, we would like you to come for the interview. You want to make sure that you ask questions, please. Where is this interview happening? At what time? Is it a written interview? Who will be there? How many people will be interviewing me? You know, preparing for a one-on-one interview is different from preparing for a 5-panel interview. So if you imagine you've prepared for a one-on-one interview and you enter the room and you see 6 people, immediately you're thrown off your game, right? And you start becoming nervous and you don't do as well. So you want to make sure that you know where it is and how it would be structured so that you come prepared. You also want to know what is the travel time between where you're staying and where that place is. And go there during the same time. So if your interview is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, make sure that a week before at 2 o'clock or 1:30, you use that however means you want to and travel to that location and see how long it takes you. The last thing you want to do is to tell your interviewer, I'm running late. Please bear with me. That says so much about you, and most likely by the time you're entering, odds are not in your favor, right? So take the time to find out that location beforehand and know your travel time. I've had people call me when I'm waiting for them and they tell me, oh, I'm 15 minutes away. They get there in 30 minutes. They start talking about, oh, I did not know what bus gets here, and etc., etc. At that time, I already know I'm wasting my time interviewing you because I don't want to hire you. And that's just, for me, it's an irresponsible mistake. So that's a very key thing to be aware of. I would echo prepare, and practice. Have practical examples, as many as possible. Have intelligent questions for me. If I finish interviewing you and I ask you any questions and you say no, then you're telling me you know everything that there is to know about my organization. And you're ready to start tomorrow, right? So have questions about the program, have questions about the long-term goals, have questions like, is this a new position? Was someone here before? Of course, we wouldn't tell you exactly why the person left, if they left in bad terms, but those kind of questions, you need to know how many people will be reporting to me, how many people will I be reporting to? There are so many questions to ask about the position that you're applying for. If you tell me you have 0 questions, then it tells me something about your personality, right? So you need to make sure that that's clear. One question that comes up a lot is, what should I say when they ask me about my salary expectations? And this is part of preparation. The good thing with the development sector is that salaries are in bands for most of the cases. So you would know, like in the UN, the range for a P1, a P2, a P, like it's usually public information. So if you're applying for a post for a certain level, you know the salary band, right? So don't come and tell me I want to earn $50,000. A minimum of $50,000, yes. You want to always come with a band. Like, I know that in this position, the average salary is usually this, that, and that with benefits. So I would be expecting something that is commensurate, but I'm open to negotiation, full stop. It's all right to do that. Don't go start asking about what are the benefits, is there a travel allowance, is there this, that, and the other. Those are conversations you have after you have received an offer, not in the beginning, because it starts to tell me that you're more focused on the benefits than you are the role that you're coming. So in your first interview, especially, you want to focus on the job that you're coming to do, the impact that that job would have, etc., etc., etc. Because you need to win them over to you to want to even discuss further. So that now when you get that follow-up call, you can get into the nitty-gritty of, okay, travel allowance, etc., etc., etc. Because frankly, all those benefits are not relevant if you don't pass the interview. So I am 1 minute over, so I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very, very much. I am not the only one. I can read from the comments, from the questions. We have over 40 questions. I've tried to answer about 20, which are straightforward, and I've left a few. Bertrand, Sharon, and Green, you guys have done an amazing job. Personally, I've learned a lot. I'm an HR professional as well, but I have learned a lot from you all. And at this time, we shall simply be going through a series of collated questions. Already in the question and answer platform of this chat, I have been responding to some questions which are more or less straight to the point and direct. But at this time, I'm going to really throw out some questions to some of our specific panelists in bands, because some questions are repetitive. So questions about reference are referees, questions about salary, questions about, etc., etc. So I'm just going to throw all those out in bands. And so I'm going to start with, Sharon. So this question is from Diran Dasi. And Diran says, in cases where you lack some of the qualities like awards, publications, you remember you mentioned those things, Sharon, in a CV, how can you shield this lack when putting together your CV? So over to you, Sharon.
Okay, thank you, Munga. So as I earlier mentioned, and the other panelists have mentioned, you don't need to lie. That is a list. It doesn't mean you need to have everything on that list. It's a continuous learning process. Put in the details of what you have. If you have a master's degree, capture the master's degree. Don't start faking license or certifications. You have to capture what you have. That's why you need to read the terms of reference of the job and see if you're a fit for it. The terms of reference of each job would give you the duties and responsibilities, the academic background required. There's a reason for all of those details in the job advert. And then you reflect on whether you have those qualities and qualifications desired, and you put. Now, most often the grants, so in development sector, there are two kinds of jobs. There's academia and there's the mainstream works we do. Most of those are grants and would go more for academia if that's what you're looking to apply for. So it's just about reflecting on what you have to offer, what you bring to the table. I've provided a list. It doesn't mean on your CV you have to have all of those elements. It's just a way to capture some of the things you need to sell yourself better. I don't know if that clears it up.
Yes, thank you. And to Bertrand, MC Ken McKen says, is it better to address my cover letter to the hiring committee if I can't have the hiring manager's name? So it's a pretty straightforward question. Is Bertrand there? Bertrand, can you come again, please? Yes, did you get the question? Hi, Bertrand.
Hello?
Oh, yes, Bertrand, did you get the question, please?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Okay, so the question came from McKen, and he said, is it better to address your cover letter to the hiring committee if you do not have the details of the hiring manager?
Well, I would say usually most roles say who you're going to be reporting to. Usually they say reporting to, the head of IT or the head of this. I would say I would address it to the head, to that title, rather than, and then if I don't have the title, maybe to the hiring committee. But usually most roles have the title of the manager who's going to be, at least the title, maybe not the name, but the title.
Perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, please address at least to the title of the person who shall be your recruiting or your hiring manager. For all of those who've asked questions about having the recording of this webinar at the end, I am reassuring you we shall send the recording of the webinar. We shall equally share the link to our YouTube page and our Facebook page. And we shall also give you some insights on how you can become members of this 237 Development Professionals Forum. So just be patient. At the end of the session, we shall share all of that information with you. And so this is Tungwing. Elvire Waffle asks if it is important to attach, for you a recruiter, is it important for you to see attached scanned copies of certificates and attestations obtained as proof of what is written in the CV? Or it's not important, can we deliver them on demand?
Personally, you can deliver them on demand, right? But sometimes you're applying in a portal that specifically asks you to upload these documents. So if you are specifically asked for them, please upload them. If you're not asked for them, don't attach them, because if it comes if you're sending an email, for example, all those attachments will be too much. So I would say that send them on demand. If they don't ask for it as a requirement, then don't attach.
Thank you, Ngui. And now this is a very interesting question from Yves Stefan Ngalo, whom I know personally, and he asks, if I am, he's French speaking, so I'll try to adjust the English a bit. He says, if I am called for a position in Yaoundé and I am in Mara with some engagement and I can't be available for the period of the interview, because some people face this dilemma. How can I manage the situation in order that my interview be online, or can I reschedule it? What are some of the tips? What can I tell those inviting me for the interview?
That was for me.
Yes, please go ahead.
So always ask for grace if you need it, right? So as recruiters, we give a time period for reviewing CV and cover letter, then we give a time period for interviewing, because we want to do things in the same batch. So if you have passed the selection process and we have called you for an interview, it means we really want to interview you. So if you are far away, I would say explain it to the recruiter. Just say, I'm here and I'm not available because of logistics, etc. But I'm happy. Always offer a solution, right? Say, I'm happy to do a phone interview or to do a Zoom interview if it is not possible to reschedule. But if you are able to reschedule to X date, I would be able to make it. And most likely they'll say, let me check with the interview team and I'll get back to you, right? So because I would not advise that you leave somebody in the lurch because you want to run and attend an interview that you don't know how it's going to turn out. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nguyen. My friend Venasius has elected himself to answer this question on the structuring of motivation letters. So, Venasius, please go ahead.
All right. So I just wanted to add on the fact that the motivational letter, like Momo has spoken about, is a very important document, and it has a structure, and it's very important to know that the structure is really, really relevant. So the motivational letter is an interesting essay. You need to write it as an interesting essay that attracts and retains the attention of the recruiting manager and the HR team. And what do I mean by that? You know, you could write an essay and it's not interesting, isn't it? So you want an essay that somebody is hooked onto it, is looking at it and saying, I want to get more out of this letter. So what is the structure? You need an introduction. You need the intro of the motivational letter simply speaks about the job you're applying to, the years of experience you have in the domain, and the key skills you have that fit clearly into the job description. And I'm talking about here, you're using the same keywords in the JD as on your CV and as on your motivation letter. So these three documents really speak to each other, yeah? Somebody picks up the job description, they see that these skills actually highlighted in your CV, they see that you've highlighted the keywords on your motivation letter. So that's the intro. Now the body, now you are telling the recruiter on the kind of previous experiences you have in terms of what they are looking for and the kind of impact you've created in previous organizations. And you are telling them that if you come to this organization, you would be the best person because you have previous experience, you have done this before, and you're very certain that you'll be able to do this again in the organization or the UN. And then the conclusion now. The conclusion is very important. The conclusion is just a little bit of summary to say, in addition now to all the keys and core competencies I've mentioned on the motivation letter, showing that it links clearly to the JD, I also have additional skills related to communications. So if they say they need someone who's bilingual, who speaks English and French, you mentioned that in the conclusion. If they need somebody who is maybe, you need to know some specific computer tools, you also mentioned that. Now, there is one soft aspect that a lot of people miss out in motivational letters when it comes to the UN, especially, and international NGOs, is how you align the values of the organization to your personal values. And let me explain this. If the job is about children, isn't it? If you are applying to UNICEF, for example, you need to see how your personal values for children are aligned to what UNICEF does. That is now some soft touch you are bringing in. If it's all about climate change, for example, and you've been pioneering or championing some climate change things, even right from your parish. Imagine maybe your parish has built a gas, a biogas something, and you champion that. You are saying this actually aligns in your passion, and that's why you want to join UNEP, for example. So I just thought to really bring this so that people should understand this, that when you're writing this letter, it is your life. You're trying to tell the person that, this is me. I have this, and I believe that I can perform in the organization. And let me explain why this is relevant. Now, most organizations are using what we call the application tracking system to pre-select CVs. So in the UN, for example, before the HR sees your CV, the CV would have, and the motivation letter would have been pre-selected by the system. This pre-selection happens because the computer picks the core competencies and the key words on your CV and your motivation letter and say this person actually relates to the job. So I hope this really gives a clear idea of when you sit on your laptop and you want to draft it, the kind of things that should go into it. Over.
Thank you very much, and for your information, Venasius works with UNICEF and he's based in Malawi. Thank you very much, Venasius, for that. I can see some comments from Say Martin saying, thank you very much, Vena. So I think that bit of information was equally vital. So we would continue. We have some more time to continue with the questions. I am electing oh no, he's dissociated himself. So There are some people in the question and answer session who've asked if it's possible that, Sharon, you share a skeleton of the CV with them based on what you presented. So would that be possible for you to share that skeleton, Sharon?
How do we do that? Can I propose these people join the group?
Yes, yes.
It's an ongoing development, and they can get to talk to each and every one of the panelists on different days to just build more on the CV. So my answer will be, please join the 2-3 professional development forum.
You and I are in sync, Sharon, because that's exactly, in some of the questions I've answered, that's exactly what I was telling some of the participants to join the 237 forum. Please be patient with us at the end or towards the end. Mr. Venasius and Mr. Chris Ngwa would come back to actually share what the 237 development forum is about and how you can become a member. So just be patient. We take more questions. So, and this is for you, Sharon. Thanks, you're on. So this is from Tango Fon. I hope I'm pronouncing it well. The first speaker sounded to me like one CV fits all, but at the end, she said we need to tailor our CVs to the job. Is that not contradictory?
Okay. So what I said was, the basic format and content of your CV remains the same. The skeleton, the blueprint of the CV is the same. And every now and then you have to switch that to reflect the job you're applying for. So your CV still has the heading, skills and competencies, past experience, all of that listed out. Now, when you're applying for a job, you need to go back and read the role you're applying for. You come back to that CV. You downplay what is irrelevant and you elaborate, you enhance what is of importance to that job. The skeleton remains the same. It's not multiple CVs. The skeleton is same, the blueprint is same. What you're doing is switching or overhauling your experiences to reflect the job you're applying for. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Sharon. As you're responding to these questions, I'm also engaging with our attendees in the Q&A section and trying to type so they see a response to their questions and they know that we are dealing with them. And so far, most of them have responded saying thank you for your response and things like that. So at this time, I believe we are on point with our responses. And now, another question from Vanessa Anne-Marie. Bertrand, you will help us here. Bonsoir à tous. Comment peut-on mettre en valeur son parcours d'étudiant en thèse pour un poste de responsable suivi évaluation? So, Bertrand, I don't know if you got that.
Comment mettre en valeur son parcours en thèse? Je vais imaginer que c'est une thèse de doctorat.
Bon, la personne n'a pas spécifié, Vanessa n'a pas spécifié, mais quand on dit thèse, c'est soit master ou doctorat.
Master, doctorat. Bon, déjà, ça dépend aussi de la thèse en question. Donc, si la thèse en question se rapporte un peu à l'évaluation, au suivi et l'évaluation, déjà, il y a un match. Donc, on peut déjà dire, OK, je vais être votre responsable de suivi et évaluation parce que ma thèse, bien sûr, se rapporte au suivi et évaluation. Si la thèse n'a aucun rapport avec le suivi et l'évaluation, bon, je vais dire, le travail d'un doctorant ou le travail d'un graduate student, d'un étudiant en master, souvent on se dit que c'est juste de l'éducation, mais aussi un côté professionnel, parce que faire de la recherche, présenter son travail devant un panel, déjà ça, ce sont des compétences qu'on recherche aussi, que ce soit dans le domaine de suivi et évaluation, mais aussi dans le monde professionnel en général. Donc, je vais dire, l'astuce que je vais donner, c'est essaye, bien sûr, comme Vénache a dit, il faut toujours commencer avec la fiche de poste et voir ce que tu as fait en tant que étudiant en master ou en doctorat, si tu peux avoir des points de connexion et les mettre en avant. Donc, c'est ce que je vais dire, mais je ne sais pas si je sais pas, il n'y avait pas tellement de contexte dans la question, donc j'espère que ce que je dis était utile.
Thank you. Merci, Bertrand. Je pense que tu as touché les points importants. So this is for Nguyen, please. It's about salary. Oh, sorry. Another question came in and it altered my view. However, the person was asking about salary expectations. The person says he or she did not understand well how to respond to the question. So Nguyen, if you can come back again and provide some clarity, that would be helpful. I just can't get the person's name because more questions came in and it altered my view.
That's all right. I think I had seen that question, and there's another question that's being asked by, I think, Ronnie, about how do you give a clear answer to the recruitment panel when asked about your salary expectations? Exactly. And then also what answers are given when a recruiter asks if you have any questions at the end of your interview.
If you can just,
the issue about the salary, so what I said is, if you're interviewing for a position, right, you should have already done your homework to know what are the salary bands in this organization, right? So if you just do a Google search, average salary of a program manager in Cameroon, etc., and see what comes on. Ask your friends, ask within the network. If you are unable, like completely, you have zero idea how much these people pay, at least you have a minimum, right? Because you know how much your expenses are and what you want to cover in this job. So basically, what I would accept as an answer, my first preference would be for you to say something like this. In doing research, I was able to tell that the salary bands for this position is between X and X, and the average salary is this much. And so I would expect that my salary would be within the same bands, but I am open to negotiation, full stop. And that's your answer. If you're clueless completely, it's okay to say that I tried to research about how much this position pays at this particular time, and I wasn't able to get a definitive answer. But given that this is a management level position, or given that this is an entry level position, I expect that we can come to an acceptable agreement about my salary should I ace this part of the conversation. End there. Because you don't know. And you don't want to say, I want 50,000 and their budget was 200, right? So what you want them to know is you're open to discussing an offer should it come to that. But you've done your research and you were not able to find anything. In terms of what answers given when a recruiter asks you if you have questions, I had covered that earlier. And if you have time, you can look at the recording later. But just to give a quick summary, there must be things about the organization that you're curious about. Like, is this a new position? What is the scope of work? Am I the only one in this position? Will I be reporting to one manager or two? Are there other people in my department? What is the long-term vision of the company for this position? Is this a short-term project or will it continue? Questions like that, that asked about who you will be working with, your work environment, and what is the vision for this position in the future.
Thank you very much, Nguyen. And I really appreciate the way the attendees and you panelists are going about this question and answer session. If you notice, I'm just pulling from trying to mix amongst the three of you so that one person does not, kind of dominate the responses. And the questions keep coming in. Already we've answered 55 questions and 24 are left. If we cannot then find the time to answer all, please bear with us. And when you join the 237 Development Professionals Forum, you can engage with each and every one of these panelists and other experts. We are over 100 of us in that forum and other experts in different fields who can equally share their experiences with you. So this is to Bertrand from Stanley Mbuabo. I hope I pronounced it well. What is the best approach to follow up the outcome of an interview? Is it to send an email or is it to call?
Okay. First, I think the thank you note is probably one of the most important things to do after the interview. So whatever, even if you think the interview was a mess, even if you think it was amazing, always at the end of the interview, if you have the contact details of the hiring manager or the people who interviewed you, send an email saying thank you. It was a privilege and an honor to talk with you. I enjoyed learning about your organization and I look forward to what is coming up next. It just shows how serious you are. That's the first thing. The other thing is, usually in the UN, it can take a lot of time. Like I almost gave up. Like it took the hiring process for me took like 9 months. I don't know. Yeah, about 9 months. Like basically, if someone was pregnant, she'll have her baby. Like can you imagine? It was really long. But I would say email is usually better. Email, it's not invasive. It's okay. You send an email. Hi, can I know about the next steps? And usually, unfortunately, if you don't get a response within 3 or 4 days, you just kind of understand. It's like you kind of get it. But the first thing to do after every interview, a thank you email. Extremely important.
Thank you. Thank you, Bertrand. At this time, it's about 6:46, and we would pause with the questions for now. Please bear with us. We've answered 61 questions already. I'm going to invite Mr. Venasio Stephen and Mr. Chris Ngwa, who are our hosts for the show tonight, to speak about the 237 Development Professionals Forum and our next webinar, which has been scheduled for the month of February. It's important because most of the questions which are left as really about how we people can join the forum. And again, most of the questions our attendees can, once they join the forum, engage with the panelists on one-on-one basis. So if you permit, let's please welcome Mr. Venasio Stephen and Dr. Chris Ngwa, who shall talk about the 237 Development Professionals Forum, as well as share the topic of our next webinar in February. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Mr. Mungai. Chris, I don't know if you're there. If you want to start first, then I can follow, because at least I've spoken already. So Chris, are you there? Is Chris around? No? All right, I can see him. All right.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, you can hear you now, yeah.
Yeah, so I was trying to get myself set up for this shorter, so I didn't have everything in place as planned. However, I want to especially thank all the panelists and our host for this webinar. Mr. Mungai, thank you very much. Thank you, Momo. Thank you, Gwing. Thank you, Sharon. And the other hands that have been working behind to make this a great deal. I'm thinking about Elvis and Mambo. Thank you so much for putting all of this together and making it work. Actually, I will allow Venasio to talk about the 237 forum, how to join it. But I just want to mention that, the best way to prepare your CV is to take your present job very seriously. That's, for me, the best way to prepare for the next job is to take this one very seriously, because any interviewer would like to know, why should I hire you based on your experience? So if your present position, whatever job you're doing now, you are not serious at it, and you're not taking it at heart, it may be complicated for you having a next job. So whatever you're doing now, get to doing it seriously. And that's why on the 237 portal, we have mentorship programs to help you succeed in your present job, and also help you move forward if you want to move forward in whatever direction you think. On the chat box, there is a link to a Slack group that you want to join, and when you join the link, you receive further instructions. So basically, this group of people, we thought we could put our heads and minds together to be able to think how best we can support those who need support and how best we can support each other. And this is our second webinar. There was a first one on positive mindset, and we're going to be having a third one that I'll allow Venus to talk about. So thank you again, everybody, for giving me this opportunity to share with you this brief moment. And Venus, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Chris. Dr. Chris works for UNICEF like myself. He's based in Madagascar. So I have in the chat box sent our Slack link. To join Slack, you just need to go to Play Store, Google download the app, and then you join. It's that easy. It's not complicated. Play Store, download the app, click on that link, and you will join. And I just want to give a disclaimer. Please only join if, one, you're interested in joining the development sphere. You know, development sphere is the NGOs or INGOs, the UN, the World Banks, and all of these other organizations. These are professionals who are of this sector. So if you want to do a marketing job, I don't really think, unless you're a marketing person and you want to switch, then you can then join, okay? I've also sent our email. For those who've been asking for CVs, templates of CVs, I've sent our email. You can send us an email. We would send you a template of a CV. I've also sent our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. Please like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will get all the information we are sharing. Then very, very relevant and very important, all of the panelists here, they are on LinkedIn. Please, a lot of young Cameroonians, they spend time on Instagram and Facebook. Spend your time on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you connect with Momo Bertrand, you connect with Chris Ngwa, you connect with myself, you connect with Bing, and everybody who's spoken. So you can actually get the conversation going one-on-one on LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn page yet, please do one and do it professionally. People just go on LinkedIn and they just put their names and whatever. It is a professional site, do it professionally. So why did we start this forum? We realized that Cameroonians, especially, and Africans, we like to complain. Pobia has not done this. The governor has not done this. The opposition has not done this. We complain a lot about everything, yet we do nothing about it. So we told ourselves that, you know, it is important that we start doing something about it. And the doing something about it is all about how do we harness our energies together, harness our talents together, support the young who are coming up to join the sector we are in, support the juniors who are already in the sector and they want to grow. There are a lot of people who are working in Cameroon, they want to become internationals. How do we support them? Some people, they're already seniors in the national positions, they want to come international. Some young graduates just finished school. They're a little bit confused. They don't know what they want to do. We can coach them, we can mentor them, you know, to get the orientation. It is a paradigm shift. We really want to change the fact that Cameroonians complain to Cameroonians can actually contribute to change the construct. And this is very important. We want to change the construct. The problems are there, the systems and the systematic problems are there. There's not much we can do, but we can contribute to push forward our own agenda. And that's why we started the forum. So we're having mentorship programs, we're having coaching programs, we're having these webinars we're organizing to really support and train people. Our next webinar will be on how to network online and offline. One of the things we have noticed is that Cameroonians spend a lot of time on Facebook and Instagram, and they don't spend time in networking on LinkedIn. We want to show you how you can meet Venatius online, connect to him, and then take it offline. It's very important. You know, those skills to connect are very important. So that will be our next webinar in February. So you can join the forum, you can connect to us on LinkedIn, you can send us an email, and let's get the conversation going. Thank you very much, Mungai, and I hope we're able to answer the questions as time goes on through the emails. Over.
Thank you very much, Venatius. At this point in time, I am pleased to announce that we've answered all the questions. Yes, Leke Thomas, no worries. We have recorded this, and you can follow by clicking our YouTube page, and you would see the recording of this webinar. Thanks. So no worries at all. We've answered all the questions, and at this time, if any other question comes up, please, we would engage with you when you join the forum, and then you can bring your question. You can bring your question there. Thank you very much. I would seize this opportunity to call on our panelists to give their closing statements, please, 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes each, and then we can round up the webinar. So I would start with Sharon, and then Bertrand, and then Wing. Thank you. Sharon, are you there?
Oh, sorry. Just coming back online. Just to round up, and I'll go back to the summary I gave at the beginning. 3 points to look out for when applying or drafting your CV. The first point is relevance. Research yourself, the sector, the employer, and the job description. Everything I have said, or Momo has said, or we has said, comes back to this. You need to understand the organization's culture, the role you're applying for, what skills, introspect to see what skills you're bringing to the table. Start with a clear understanding of what the selector is looking for. The second point will be order. Put the most important information first and give it the most space. As we mentioned, recruiters are receiving thousands of applications. You want to capture them on the first page. They won't have the time to probably read the third page. You need to grab their attention. Ensure your CV is targeted and relevant. Use the best examples you've got. 3, format. Make it easy to read. And 4, attention to details. Check for spelling and grammar. Review and always ask for feedback. I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Wow, that is great, Sharon. Thank you very much. Bertrand?
That's my guy. Just 3 quick things to go. The first is the interview is really your opportunity to stand out from the crowd. And you should remember the CAR principle. When you're asked a question related to your competencies, first give the C, context, then say the action you did, that's the A, and finally give the results. And if possible, quantify your results. The second thing is rehearsing. I think if you download books, if you look at videos on preparing for interviews, a lot don't put emphasis on this, but I think it's the biggest difference maker when you are going in for an interview. Rehearse like it was the last thing you had to do, like rehearse like it was the last speech you would give. And the final thing I would like to say is really it's important to, I know it's a cliche, but it's important to believe that you can do this. I think if you look at the profiles, whether it's Venatius, who's at UNICEF, or my own profile, like we grew up in Cameroon. We all had these dreams, but you look at around you and Chimalte Benya or Koshat Martin, and you don't believe that it's possible. But I think just there's a lot of faith into this. You can use all the techniques that we've said here, but faith will carry you through. So faith, rehearse, and the CAR method. And good luck.
Thank you, Bertrand. And finally, Nguyen, can you give your concluding statement?
Definitely. Thank you for this engaging forum. I loved your questions. It showed me that you were listening and you were paying attention, so that's great. My parting shot would be, the first one is network. Someone asked about how do you network? I think when we use the big word network, it makes people scared. Networking is going to that party and not sitting only with your friends. Networking is walking into that coffee shop and having a small conversation with the person who is serving you. Networking is participating in online conversations on Facebook with people you've never met. Networking basically is trying to know as many people as possible without any particular intention. Be bold, yet be humble, right? If you don't meet all the qualifications for a job, apply for it anyway. I said in your motivational letter, you want to stand out, tell a story. You might find that you don't have that master's degree or you don't have that PhD, but the recruiter will be endeared to your story that you wrote and why for you, this job is important, right? They might say, I like this person's spirit, I'll interview them anyway. Then you get the second chance to prove yourself a good fit. So be bold, but be humble. Never show up like I know everything, right? Also be malleable, be flexible. You might be starting out saying, I'm participating in this forum because I want to get to the UN. I want a UN job, full stop. But you might find that GIZ is hiring, right? Or another ABC NGO is hiring. Apply there. Go there. Maybe they have jobs with the UN. I worked for a development consulting firm. A lot of our consultants ended up being poached by our clients. And who were our clients? The UN, AGRA, etc. So you might be thinking, I want to work for this international agency. But there's this consulting firm that does numerous projects with the UN. Get into that consulting firm, get on a project with the UN and kick butt, right? So that at the end of the project, your client is looking at you and side-chatting you and saying, hey, you want to join our team instead? And just like that, you've gotten in. So don't have your mind only focused on this particular moon that you fail to see the other stars around you. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Ngwing. Thank you, Bertrand. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Elvis. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Venatius. It's exactly 7 p.m. I am happy to have moderated this session with all these great minds. I'm happy, I'm thankful to the over 110 attendees, that's our average for today, who have been here with us from beginning to the end. Thank you for your questions. We handled over 100 questions, and thank you for your engagement. Look at the chat, you would see the link to joining our Slack forum. I can see I've been receiving notifications on my phone already about a few people who have joined, like Besong Nicole, etc., etc. And Mambo Divine is sharing with you the rules and regulations for what you should do when you join the Slack forum. Thank you guys again very much. Have a nice weekend and see you hopefully again next month for our next webinar. Thank you all and enjoy your weekend. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Ciao.